Hey everybody, I'm P. Turner, executive producer and host of the Break It Down show, running a live town hall for mayoral candidate for Benicia, California, my hometown. His name is Jason Diavatis. This is his sign back here, and we're recording live from the Loft in downtown Benicia on First Street. What's your background in Benicia?
Gosh, Pete, well, first off, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
I know that you made a special trip to be here, and I really appreciate that. So my background in Benicia is long. Actually, I've been here all my life. I was born and raised in Benicia. I went to Mary Farmer Elementary School, Benicia Middle School, and I graduated, although some might say barely, that could be accurate, from Benicia High School.
I also barely graduated from Benicia High School.
See, you know what? Good company.
What are your values as a person, as a member of this town? What are the values of Benicia?
You know, Benicia is a friendly town. We are about the friendliest town I've ever seen, and I hear that all the time from people when they come here. You guys agree with that? I'll point out we actually do have a live audience here today, which thank you guys for being here. Lots of golf claps. So Benicia is just, the charm of Benicia are the people, really.
Okay.
We have a historic downtown that comes all the way down to the waterfront. We're surrounded right where we are right now by water on three sides. So it's a bit of a peninsula at the bottom of First Street. Gosh, it's just that small town charm.
You've had businesses here for a long time. Talk a little bit about your business past.
Well, you know, it's really funny. Even going back into high school, I actually started my first non-real business when I was in high school. It was for lighting. I grew up in theater. So, you know, my father was the athletic director of California Maritime Academy, and his passion was community theater. So for me, I got to grow up in a few different worlds. And so when I was in high school, I got into doing lighting. In fact, I actually got to do sound one time for Green Day before anybody knew who they were. I was just at a house party in Valero. But I used to travel all over the Bay Area doing lighting. I wasn't very good, but you had to start somewhere. And then right out of high school, I had the opportunity to help. There used to be a Chubby's. Do you remember Chubby's?
I remember Chubby's, yes.
Right, where the Starbucks is?
Yeah.
So actually, I became really good friends with the guy, Craig, that owned it at the time, and I haven't seen him in years. But I said, Craig, you should do a car show here. He says, okay, that's a great idea. How do I do it? You know anybody? I'm like, well, I watched my dad do a car show at California Maritime Academy. So I could do it. So I started helping him put together the car show, and I needed a DJ. I didn't have a DJ, so I called a good friend of mine, Derek Bergerson. Actually, I barely knew him at the time. Now we're like brothers. And so Derek came out and helped me DJ it. We stole all the music from my dad since he graduated in the 60s. Mm-hmm. So he had all the music. So that was the first real business I started. So actually, I got a business license in the city of Benicia. That was a DJ and events company. So I got to put on events. I got to DJ events. I did the farmers market for many years. I did a lot of the 4th of July celebrations. Gosh, I did weddings. I did all the stuff at the middle school, the high school. It was just a lot of fun. It was a great way to grow up in this town.
And then you opened up the Loft about 8 years ago. You guys just passed your anniversary.
Yeah, well, September 14th is actually our 8-year anniversary for opening the Loft. So the Loft was never supposed to be a bar and restaurant.
Right, I remember these days.
Right?
Yes.
This is actually going to be my office for event design because that was my career at the time. So I spent most of my time in San Francisco designing big events. The last big event that I did before I retired into this was, as a matter of fact, for P. Diddy, and it was at the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco. It was the Northern California launch for Ciroc vodka.
Oh, okay.
So that was the last big thing that I did, and then I fell into the bar business, which converted into the restaurant business. So it's really exciting that I get to have a really cool, it's a small bar and restaurant, but it's right downtown in my hometown. And I love that.
A guy who's got a successful business in the busiest part of town, why on earth are you running for mayor? Whew. Especially given like COVID and all the challenges of running a business in this time.
You know, I've thought about this so much. And, you know, I think it really started, let's be honest, with frustration.
Okay.
Let's be really honest. It started with frustration. There were a lot of things that, you know, I've had a relationship. So for over 28 years, I've had a business here in Benicia. And I've always had a really great relationship with all of our mayors, all of our council members. So when I think as a business owner, it's really important to be able to have the ear of your elected officials. And it started to feel like we weren't having their ear. So frustration definitely had a lot to do with that. So I gave a lot of thought to it, and I thought, if I do this, I think that I can add a lot to my town. I mean, obviously, I have great relationships in this town already. I know everybody that's running, and I like them all. But for me, it really had to do with, I came to realize we were missing something really important in this town, communication. We don't talk. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about City Hall with the citizens. We don't communicate. And during COVID, that was the number one complaint that I heard is, where are our elected officials? Where are our city leaders? Nobody's communicating. And I think what we're doing right now, doing a Facebook Live town hall, I think that if more of this had happened during COVID, you would have had a little bit, you would have eased people's fears and concerns. What do you guys agree with that?
The audience is nodding yes.
Yeah. So thank you. Read that into the record.
So
that's really why I decided to jump in. And honestly, Pete, I went back and forth quite a bit. I asked people, and I thought, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Can I actually help my town? And ultimately, the answer came back yes. It took a while, but I'm really excited. So I'm fully in it now. And my staff has been terrific. They've really they've been focusing here at the restaurant, allowing me to run the campaign.
You're obviously focused on business. One of the things I've heard from a lot of business owners as I've talked to people in town is the city's propensity to sort of say no to a lot of things as a default answer. So you want to make a small change to your business, like you've added this patio area way before COVID. These were all started as no's. Talk a little bit about the city's problem with supporting business.
I don't want to blame Benicia alone. I think that this is a standard government approach. The answer is always no. So as a business owner, for example, in 2018, I wanted to do some nice improvements to the front of my restaurant. We're in an amazing location. We're downtown in our historic downtown district. I wanted to make it look nicer. It blended in with everything else, and I didn't have a proper outdoor dining area. So in 2018, I went to the city of Benicia and I said, hey, I wanted to add an awning at first. The answer was no. Okay, well, I want to add some lights. No. I want to do an enclosure for my sidewalk dining. No. So after the third no, I said to the staff that I was dealing with, I said, and they're all great. They're just doing their job. But I said, all right, listen, I'm tired of the answer no. How do we get to yes? So the answer was that, hey, listen, this is really a city council issue. You've got to go. We'll send this up to city council. So they sent it to the city council. Well, what frustrated me was they put a suggestion, do not approve. Right. So the recommendation to the council was, don't approve it. We're going to send it to you, but don't approve it. I didn't really care for that approach. Fortunately, council was very receptive. So when I approached them individually with the idea of, hey, let's improve our outdoor dining, our sidewalk dining permits. And, I got to give a nod to Steve Young because Steve was really instrumental. I know people don't like me thanking him, but I like Steve. And I think that we need more of this. We don't have to agree on everything, but the things that we can agree on, let's work together on it. So together with council, we really pushed this idea of updating the 1992 sidewalk dining ordinance. And we did all this, it was started October of 2018. It was a lot of work. So council approved it overwhelmingly. So it had the support of all the council members that were there. I don't think everybody was there. And then in 2019, we started really moving on it. And I believe it was April 2019 that the whole process had been completed. I actually was really involved with the process, and I got to some of my words and some of the big things that I was really pushing for went right in there, like the pinch point. So there's plenty of room on the sidewalk, but we have plenty of room now so that many restaurants, not just mine, this is for citywide. Right. Before this, you had to set up on the sidewalk and tear down every single day. Now the restaurants, we can set up on the sidewalk. We can do temporary. There's supposed to be a process for permanent. We haven't seen that yet, but that's something that we can work on with the next council. So we got the sidewalk dining ordinance updated, and I'd say that it really made a difference. And now with COVID, we know that having outdoor dining, we'd all be dead right now. So it was really fortuitous that over a year and a half ago that we were on top of this and we got the sidewalk dining ordinance updated.
What has that ability to push out meant to you and your peers? I mean, you must know roughly what the numbers are. You must know what your peers are talking about. I mean, and is there any negative impact to the city in terms of having these pushed out? And I'm not talking COVID. I'm talking just in general with the the thing that they didn't want to do, now that you have it, Venticello's, all these different restaurants have it.
Venticello's did an amazing job on theirs.
Right.
And that's a parklet, which is a little bit different than the sidewalk dining ordinance. Ultimately, no, you know what? I've heard a handful of complaints about, well, there's not enough room on the sidewalk. There's 60 inches on the sidewalk, and there are plenty of areas in this town that I've walked. You don't even have 36 inches on the sidewalk. So I think we're going to be fine with 60 inches. I have 65 feet of exposed patio on First Street. So for that area, you got primarily 60 inches with 48-inch pinch points, plenty of room. Then you go to the idea of the parklets. You know, this is something where communication would have made a really big difference, because everybody really wants to support the businesses. If we don't have good businesses, especially downtown, now industrial park is a whole different issue. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But if we don't have really solid, successful businesses downtown, we lose the heart of our community. And COVID has really racked up a lot of problems, quite frankly. So what the city did, we also had this idea of parklets. And so the city kind of sidelined that while we worked on the sidewalk dining ordinance. But the parklets became really popular with COVID, right?
Yeah.
So every city is doing it now. And so Benicia started to work on this idea of the parklets. I wasn't a big fan of how we rolled out our parklets. We didn't communicate with the businesses. So I actually asked city staff and said, hey, what are we going to do? When are we going to start talking to the business owners, the stakeholders, about how to implement these parklets? Well, unfortunately, they never did. So they sent parklets to, there were 4 applicants for the parklets, as I understand it. And they got these K-rails, these big plastic water K-rails.
Yes.
And that was the city's solution. So now I want to illustrate this, because this is an example of how you can support businesses as part of the city. So if the city were simply to let the business owners innovate the solutions and then support them, you would have much better solutions. The city solution, without communicating with the business owners, was those big plastic K-rails, water K-rails. Well, you look at what Venticello's did. Ramiro up at Venticello's, he said, hey, listen, I want a parklet, but I don't want what you're doing. I want something nicer, because aesthetics matter for our downtown, for our businesses. And so what Ramiro did was he worked with the city for a couple of weeks. He, at his own cost, spent a lot of money to make a really nice built-in parklet. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Go dine on it. It's really nice. Right now, I understand it's only temporary.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope that the city will see forward to make it permanent for him, because he didn't build it as a temporary. It looks really nice. So,
in terms of business, we have to cover some of these things. You've got a reputation for defending your business.
yeah.
Talk a little bit about why, who you are, what that means to your peers, and just in general, when folks, because there are people talking about, you are aggressive in defending how you make your money, but also your peers as well. So talk a little bit about that perception.
When I defend my business, I'm not defending just me. I'm defending all the people that work for me. I'm defending all the people that like my business and they want to come in and enjoy it. And yeah, I'm going to be tough defending my business. As a mayor, I think that there's probably going to be some times that I'm going to have to be tough as a mayor. Because if you don't stand up for what you believe in, and if you don't push for what you need, nobody just wants to offer it to you. So every time I've gone to the city, for example, and this is where I've developed a little bit of a reputation, I think, for being tough. And I'm going to stand by that reputation. I don't have a problem with it. So when the city says no, I don't give up. I'm going to keep working on it. Sometimes you can find a workaround, and sometimes you have to push right through the no. With the other businesses, look at Sailor Jack's, for example. They wanted to do that outdoor dining area for a long time, is my understanding. And then with COVID, it gave them the opportunity to implement it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They really did an outstanding job. So I think that every business owner really has to defend their business. And in business, if you're not tough, you're going to get beat up really, really quick.
How does that translate to your mayoral role for the non-business owners in town?
I'm going to be a fighter for our community. But first, I'm a communicator. So first, I need to hear from you guys. It's so important. I want to see more citizens engage in the governance of our town. Right now, it's just the loud ones. In fact, I could tell you during this campaign, my guess is at least 80% of people don't even know there's a campaign. They're all too busy paying attention to the presidential race. They don't realize that our little town has a lot going on right now. So they probably couldn't name the candidates. A lot of people couldn't name me, even though I was born and raised here. So there's a lot of people that aren't paying attention. So the first step is really communication, right? So if you guys engage with your city leaders, then we can fight for things for you. I think there's a lot going on with our roads, right? We've got a lot of work to do on our roads, and we have really great city staff. Tuesday, I'm going to toss this little nugget in there. There's a really big announcement coming out. I'll just, listen, you heard it here first. I can't tell you what it is, just out of respect, but you're going to love it. It's going to be great news for the city. So we have some really great city staff that are working really hard. We need to untie their hands so that they could do even more. So there's going to be a lot of fighting, right? And I don't mean that in an aggressive manner, but standing up for what we believe in. Because our town, we're facing an $8 to $11 million revenue shortfall over the next year and a half, maybe even 2 years. What are we going to do? How are we going to rebuild those revenues without going to you guys and saying, hey, you're going to have to pony up some more cash. We're going to raise your fees again. In 2017, there was an attitude that moved into our town of, let's just collect from the citizens. Let's collect from the businesses. And that, I don't think, is the right approach. We need to diversify our tax base. So that way we can all enjoy some growth and prosperity. But the fighting, it's going to be real. And I'm not talking about nasty, mean fighting. It's just going to be standing up, looking for innovative solutions and supporting our little town.
One of the things, talk about being a communicator, one of the things that's been communicated to me is that the condition of the roads is not tenable for a long-term situation. As a mayor, you have to run on roads. So what do you think? What's your approach?
Well, first off, let's understand the roads, right? So we haven't really done much on roads. There was a lot of time we didn't work on our roads. We didn't put any investment to it. And I believe it was in 2015, we passed Measure C. Measure C, I think you guys would agree that the overwhelming majority of people, we were sold Measure C as a way to fix our roads and infrastructure. What do you think? You guys agree with that? Okay, so, but of course the city can really do whatever they want with the Measure C. I'm okay with that, but I'd like the transparency on it, right? So we have raised, where is it? I actually, because I can't remember all of these things off the top of my head.
That road right there? Is that your notes?
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate that. Thanks, Pete.
Always.
So the city estimated we have about $30 million worth of road repair work to do. 46% of our roads right now are in poor or failing condition.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, 46%. That's a lot.
Yeah, and that number's not getting smaller right now.
That's not going to get smaller. We have roughly 196 lane miles. We have a lot of work to do. So the project has been estimated at about $30 million worth of repair to do on our roads. Yet all I've seen, unless somebody wants to correct me, about $1.2 to $1.4 million a year is what we've tossed at that problem. So there's a few other things that are kind of fun about that, right? So we have, here, I'll give you yours back because I found it on mine. Thank you very much. So in Benicia, for example, we have amazing resources that we're not fully utilizing. If you look at 25% of all the asphalt on Northern California roads, at least this is the number that I was given, comes from the Benicia Valero asphalt plant. We really need to work on that relationship. I think one of the problems is that we keep on beating up Valero and then we go ask them for things. I'm sorry, but if you keep on beating up mom and dad and you ask them for something afterwards, the answer's not going to be what you want. So I think they would do a lot more to participate with our community. They do a lot already, and I don't want to diminish that in any way. But I think that there's a lot that we could get, a lot more that we can get out of this partnership with Valero if we were working with them more, right? So, and partnership is key. So most of that asphalt, we can get our asphalt right here in Benicia and put it on our own roads. So one of the ideas that I have, and I think some people within the city have embraced it, but I think a lot of people, there's a lot of excuses why not. But we should at least have the conversation. Why not lease our own road repair equipment and hire our own road repair crew that's going to bring a few more jobs to Benicia instead of outsourcing all of this. We outsource a lot in our town. Some of it's great, right? Some things that we outsource are terrific. Some things it's just it's not necessary.
Let's talk about water and sewer.
Oh boy, that's a fun one. What do you guys think about the water rates?
A lot of no's.
A lot of no's. There's not a yes. Nobody
Right.
likes them. So in 2016, when we started to hear about these water rates, the increase coming up, and that the council was supporting it, I called for all the businesses downtown, because this is where I live. Downtown is not the only part of town, and I want to make that clear. We have lots of different parts of town, but I'm in the downtown area, so I'm tapped in. So I got all the businesses downtown, or many of them. We all met up at Pizza Pirate in the back room. My buddy Pat Abshire was kind enough to let us use that room. I think a lot of people have used that room for events over the years. We filled that room with Benicia business owners that were really concerned about the increase in water and sewer rates.
Was the city there?
No. The city wasn't there. We did this twice. We had 2 meetings, and the goal was to come up with one voice and ask the city council to reconsider, because the water rates were too much, too fast. They didn't even finish the first capital improvement within the first year after they raised the water rates so high. So our meeting, the result was we had all these business owners, and yes, we reached out to the city and we said, hey, we want you to say no to this. We want you to come up with a better plan, because again, it's too much, too fast. They ignored us, which is part of why I'm here today, as a matter of fact, why I'm running for mayor, because I think that, gosh, we should be listening to our business community. There are a lot of smart people in our business community. So our water and sewer rates definitely are very high for the area. We are unique. We do own our own water and sewer plants, which not many cities do that, especially this size. We've got 29,000 people here, and we have our own water and sewer plant, which is great. So there's a lot of money that's going to go into it. And I'm not saying that we don't need the money. We don't need to make these improvements. But what I am saying is that for our senior citizens, for example, that are on fixed income, we keep raising their rates on everything, but their income's not going up. What are we going to do about that? So one thing that I've looked at as a very minimal hope, and it's only a hope because I'm not on the inside. I don't have all the access to this information yet. I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot. But one hope that I have is that we can at least reduce the rates for our senior citizens that are on fixed incomes.
I want to go back to Valero because they are, and they have been, the refinery in general has been an advocate and a partner, part of the community for well over 50 years.
Yeah.
And we have a very adversarial position with them. They also need to improve their communication. Well, that's one of their problems. What do you see happening? If you're mayor, how do you approach this, respecting the folks that are against the refinery's presence, and also the rest of us that have seen what Valero, Humboldt, Exxon have done for the community?
Well, your point is exactly correct. I mean, gosh, in the 60s, before we built the Humboldt Oil here in Benicia, which is now Valero Refinery, Benicia was a ghost town. And it was on the verge of becoming completely empty. It wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
Right. And so when Humboldt Oil came in, because we just lost the arsenal, obviously this is before we were alive, right? Yeah. But when Humboldt Oil came in, we had just lost the arsenal a few years before, and Benicia was falling apart. It was a ghost town. So the relationship with Valero has been amazing, and what they've done for us over the years, really, it kept Benicia alive and then helped allow us to grow. I've heard numbers that Valero directly and indirectly accounts for about 50% or more of the Benicia economy. So the reality is that environmentalism is important, right? I like to breathe fresh air. I like to drink clean water. The smoke the last couple of weeks has been pretty tough out here. Thank God Valero is not nearly as bad as some would have you believe. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think cleaning up our environment is really important. But I think having a balancing point with Valero is really also very important. They're a great community member, and we need to look at them along with our other businesses as partners.
Yeah, fair enough. Looking at the community as a whole, as the mayor, trying to get more engagement, how do you propose we do that?
So the community as a whole, more engagement. Well, one simple thing that we can look at is helping people to engage more with our city council meetings. For over a year, I've been asking the city council and the city staff to share the city council meetings on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Live. So there's a lot of social media platforms. There's not one answer for the whole thing, but it's one piece of the puzzle. I think that more people would engage with our city council meetings if we were sharing it on social media. Because right now you have what, 3 choices. You can't go in person, so you have 2 choices. So it used to be you could show up in person, and eventually COVID will be over, and you'll be able to do that again. Thank God. I pray for that day, don't you?
Seriously, yes.
So you can go in person, not right now. You can watch it on your government access channel, right, on TV, or you can watch it on the website. The website's clunky. The audio and the video quality of these meetings is really bad. And for me, coming from the event industry, aesthetics are really important. I want to be able to watch and hear and not be uncomfortable. So I think that sharing that, making it more accessible to our citizens is really important, because you guys should know more about what's going on. I'll bet you if we quizzed Venetians as a whole, most people, they're too busy paying attention to their own lives, their families, and how to take care of their own livelihood. They're not paying attention to the decisions made by the city, unless it's something really big like what happened a couple weeks ago.
I want to ask a couple questions from people that have addressed us either through the internet, here in the live audience, and also just from my own friends that have encountered me with questions. Kurt Dunaway wants to know, what is your stance on a dispensary here in Benicia, and what do you want to do about it? Because it's a challenging problem. You know, it's maybe 50-50, 60-40. What do you do?
Well, people I've talked to about the cannabis dispensary, it is about 50-50. I hear equally. In fact, it's really funny. I've heard from people that were really, really pro-cannabis that I would have never expected. I mean, it really surprised me. So I respect that. I'm going to tell you, I've never smoked marijuana in my life. So cannabis has never been my drug. You know, I don't do drugs, actually.
There you go.
So I don't have a drug. All right, alcohol, don't blame me. I own a wine bar, all right? So I do like wine. I won't lie about that. So in terms of cannabis dispensary, it's been a ping pong. We go back and forth over the last few years. We had 2 different councils. One council made a set of decisions. The next council came in and didn't agree with those decisions. So, all right, let's get to the bottom of that question. The basic answer that you're looking for is, am I pro or opposed to a cannabis dispensary? I'm neither. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm on the fence. I am really, really willing to hear both sides of the argument. We have 1 cannabis dispensary coming in right now, and that's a done deal. That's not a decision I get to be part of. So for me, I would say that I'm more than happy to hear what the community has to say about it, and then make an impartial decision. I don't have a horse in that race. I mean, I do, in the way that when it was first proposed, I was very vocal, and you can go back and find all my posts on Facebook, I'm sure. I did not want it in our downtown. This is where our families come. Downtown, the families come, the tourists come. I did not want a cannabis dispensary downtown. Am I opposed to a cannabis dispensary? No, I'm not. The tax revenue is going to be great, right? Let's be honest. There's revenue to come in from there. I don't want kids smoking marijuana. I think that's really bad. But I'm also, honestly, a libertarian. So if you want to smoke marijuana, go ahead and smoke. If you're an adult and you get to make that choice, go ahead. That's none of my business. I don't want to put it in our neighborhoods. I think that's really important. If you want to if you can't put a liquor store in a location where you're going to put a cannabis dispensary, you might want to rethink that. So I think that we just need to be a little bit more thoughtful about where we put the next cannabis dispensary in town. Mm-hmm. Right now, the location on N Street, I know the neighbors are really unhappy about it. And I don't blame them. I really empathize with that. So I'm not opposed to cannabis. I'm not a pro-cannabis guy either. But I think as a mayor, I think you want somebody that has the ability to come in that doesn't already have their mind made up on everything already and make a fair decision. So if that's what the community wants, is another cannabis dispensary, then let's do it. But let's just be smart about where we put it.
Let's talk about another local business owner. Scott Burford asks, if elected, what would you try to do, if anything, with the Sino family about the land off of East 2nd Street?
Man, this has been a big issue my entire life.
Yeah.
My entire life.
Forever.
Right?
Yeah.
So 526 acres, right there, Lake Herman and East 2nd Street. Man, I have a lot of friends that hate this idea. They don't want it. They just don't want it. But I can tell you that growth does equal prosperity. And if you don't want your fees to keep going up, you have got to support something there. I think that doing a housing tract is a long-term liability for the city. It's a short-term boost of cash, which feels good, but in the future, it becomes a problem. I really would support, and I have a lot of homework I need to do on this, but there's conversations that haven't been had in years. So a mixed use would be great. Right now it's zoned industrial. So industrial, commercial, maybe some mixed residential in there. People don't really want residential in there, but if you have to give a little bit for the residential, you got to do it smart. And there's a lot of really smart people that have looked at this, and I'm really, really happy to work with them. But here's the number one problem with the Sino property. We don't communicate. We don't talk about it. Communication with Sino has not happened in probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
How do you solve a problem if you're not willing to communicate? This is my big concern with Sino. So I am absolutely in favor of doing something there. Gosh, I don't know if Sino and the city of Benicia can't do business together. Maybe we can work with Sino to find a buyer. It'd be great to get a big tech campus to move in. The location of Benicia is amazing. We're within an hour of San Jose, San Francisco, Santa Rosa, Sacramento. We're right in the heart of everything, and I think that any company would find Benicia an amazing place, location-wise, community-wise. We need a city that really supports business, and like you alluded to earlier, we have a reputation of being anti-business in Benicia. There are a lot of people that want to fix that. And there are some people that have been part of that problem that won't be here moving forward. So we need to become more pro-business in this town, unless you want your water rates to keep going up and your city fees to keep going up. We've got to diversify our tax base.
I know a great place where you can raise a lot of tax revenue and improve the town. It's not a mayoral issue, and yet it is because you need to lead it. What do we do about the former Cliffs location?
Well, gosh, Cliffs is something that people in this town love, right? I mean, growing up here,
Yeah.
I had many a lasagna dinner down there, and I loved it. In fact, I'm good friends with the people that own the property. I could tell you that I've been in talks with them for a few years. We've gone back and forth. They really want to do something there. They're working on it. It's not going real fast, granted, but they're working on it.
Okay.
So I really support bringing Cliffs back. I mean, come on, the fishermen down there, they need a good cold beer. So I think the Cliffs could be a huge boon for our town. It's not going to be a big tax revenue, but the reality is that we can do a lot of good things there. It just makes Benicia even better, right? So when you have a great business like Cliffs used to be, for example, and again, the nostalgia there is really key. But when you have a great business like that, it just makes the town feel better. And there's a big benefit. But you know what I want to talk about, Pete?
Let's do it. What
All
is
right. So the city of Benicia, we have a lot of key city assets that we're not utilizing properly. Hey, look at that. We switched over
it? Yeah,
to a
we
different
switched
camera.
over. Yeah,
All right. You're going to sit there for the next hour holding that.
that's what I'm going to do.
Good for you, man. I'm proud of you. So we have key city assets that we're not utilizing properly. One of those is the train depot at the bottom of First Street.
Mm.
You know, it was built in Banta, California in the late 1800s as the Pacific Railroad train depot, and it was moved and reconstructed in Benicia in 1902. It's an amazing location. It's surrounded by water on three sides. You have an incredible panoramic view, yet we're not using it. It brings no revenue in for the city of Benicia, and it doesn't give an anchor point. We need a beautiful anchor point at the bottom of First Street, right?
Yeah.
So I do have a plan I've been working on, and I'll go ahead and share the details here with
I
you.
also want to give credit to Thomas Jacobson for asking about this very thing.
Yeah,
How
Tom.
are we going to use this? So
Right.
I want to give him credit for asking.
We did jump ahead to Tom's question.
Yeah. And
so,
if you have a question and you're live on the Downshow site, ask it and I'll make sure I push it through.
Okay.
Please continue.
All right. So with the train depot, the first thing is I'd love to see some train tracks come back down to that area. I'm not talking about bringing trains back by all the homes at the bottom of B Street, but imagine if we had some train track down there just for display purposes, and we put some train cars on there so that way it looked get to use this beautiful old 1800 building. So I think that would be a lot of fun. But now let's talk about where the revenue is, because people have said to me, I brought this idea up to some friends at the city, and they said, Jason, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Because I gave them a number, right? And this is what they got mad at me for. I said, I think we can generate at least $500,000 a year from the old train depot. And so that's ridiculous. All the bars and restaurants in downtown Benicia don't generate more than $250,000 a year in sales tax revenue alone. I said, well, that's why you need a business owner, right? You need somebody that's an innovative thinker, because the city owns that building. Imagine this. A lease rate is what a renter, a tenant, would pay to the landlord, right? So in the restaurant business, under 10%, you're going to be okay. 8% is not great, and it's not horrible. So I would propose an 8% lease rate to the city of Benicia. So whoever moves in there to open up a bar and restaurant, I think they would generate about $5 million a year as a restaurant. This is city-owned property. 8% of that revenue would go right to the city as a lease rate, right? So it'd be lease income, like a rental house, right? That's $400,000 a year on $5 million. And then the city gets a share of the sales tax revenue. And then there's the Measure C funds that the city also gets. That's over $500,000 a year. So if it's a big deal that our bars and restaurants generate $250,000 a year, all of us, over 20 downtown,
Yeah.
yet one can generate $500,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah.
That's more money than we've been bringing in, isn't it?
Heather Graves asks, we have a projected large city revenue shortfall. How would you as mayor balance our budget without cutting essential services like police, fire, street maintenance, or by raising taxes and utility fees? Is there pork in the city budget that can be cut? So you're already offering a potential $500,000 solution, if not more. And then she's also talking about the rest of the budget. What are your thoughts on Heather's question?
I think it's a great question. And yeah, I got it. There's no way that there's not pork in there. There are areas. Our city just voted to spend waste, in my opinion, $89,000 on a 20-hour-a-week position that I don't believe is going to solve the problem that it was looked at. So yeah, there's pork. That's $89,000 right there. If we can get this new council in to cancel that job position, I got to tell you, I'm going to get pushback from some of my friends. But I really believe that's not the solution. On that topic, if we get to it later, there's other solutions. It's an important issue, but there's other solutions. $89,000, we have a hiring freeze on right now. We have an $8 to $11 million projected shortfall. This is serious. So yeah, we need to trim the fat.
I know from sitting on the Benicia's representative for the county's transportation committee subcommittee for pedestrian issues. That's what I did for a while. Grants were hyper important, and you're competing with LA, San Diego, San Francisco, all of these big cities that have grant writing teams. What are your thoughts on how we compete for money? I mean, this is grant money. You can ask for it. If you ask for it well, you can get it.
Well, to be fair, Pete and I've talked about this a lot already, actually. Yeah. So one of the goals that I have is, so there are some positions that maybe we can combine, but there's some new positions that we need to seriously hire. One of those is a full-time grant writer. So I actually do have a plan. Thank you for handing that off to me, Pete. I do have a plan that would involve hiring a full-time. Now, as a mayor, I don't get to do these things, by the way. I get to support them. I can bring these ideas up, and if council supports it, then we get the city manager to implement it. So I want to be clear. I don't think that I think that I get to come in here and just do whatever I want, right? These are things I support. So hiring a full-time grant writer, there'd be three main things that this grant writer would be responsible for. Step one, this full-time grant writer would spend all their days looking for grants that benefit directly the city of Benicia, right? There's a lot. There's a lot that we could do. A lot of roads. We do have a few grant writers. There are a few people within our city organization that are helping to write grants. We do not, as I'm aware, have a full-time grant writer, and that's a position I think we need. So the second level, right? So once they've exhausted all their time working on just direct benefits to the city of Benicia, then they're working for we have great nonprofit organizations in Benicia. We have a lot of them. So if we have a great grant writer, the next step is they can look for grants and apply for grants and to help these nonprofits to generate grant revenue there. But then there's a third step. Now, granted, that's if step 1 and 2 doesn't occupy all the time. Step 3 is we have so many great businesses in town, and I'll bet there's a lot of available grants for our businesses. So that grant writer would extend their services to also help write grants, search for, and write grants that would benefit our businesses. So those three things, a grant writer, gosh, I mean, what are you going to pay a grant writer? 150,000, maybe 200,000. They'd probably bring in millions of dollars a year in revenue.
I know for sure that the performance of the grant writing and getting it up to code so you can compete with big cities, it is a skill that you have to pay for.
It's very competitive.
Hardy Knight, a friend of mine from way back when,
Oh, yeah.
asks, and I'm going to modify his question because we've covered a lot of this, but he says, I'm sure you're aware of the downtown businesses that we've lost due to the unnecessary shutdown and many that are struggling to survive through no fault of their own. I have not seen any ideas originating from our city council on creative ways to help our downtown businesses through these difficult times. What are your ideas to help revitalize our downtown businesses and, or I'm going to add this in, the industrial park that were ravaged by the shutdown, or we need to put extra businesses in and are now struggling just to keep the doors open? What are you going to do to revitalize business in general?
So I want to be clear. The city actually has been working on boost grants, which is great. But it's a drop in the bucket, right? Because it's, I think, about $250,000. I don't remember the exact number. It's not $1 million. We can say that, right? And then you have people like Jimmy Ponder stepped up along with the Chamber of Commerce, and they did really great things. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that things have been done. It's just we need to do more. I mean, from Jimmy Ponder, I think that was incredibly generous. Jimmy and other people took right out of their own pockets to do some of these great things in town. So, but in terms of ideas originating from the city council, yeah, there are a lot of things that, the first thing that the city needs to remember is that they're not necessarily innovators. Business owners, we are absolutely innovators. Communicate with the business owners. Let us innovate solutions, and the city council can support them. And so directly to your question, one of the ideas that I've been talking with some of our other restaurant and bar owners downtown, there's this idea, and you've already seen it done in other towns. We are way behind the curve. But the idea is this. We close down First Street in the farmer's market zone, because there's already a process for it. We do this on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday. We can do the same hours as farmer's market, so we're not reinventing the wheel, 4 to 8 p.m., let's say. The city owns a lot of tables and chairs up at the clock tower. We get the city employees to bring those down, and we can get volunteer help to move the tables and chairs into the middle of First Street. Again, we call this the Marina District down here. It's fairly a new term for me, but I like it a lot because we are the Marina District of First Street. So we get the tables and chairs down here. That we can space them out as much as you like, and then we have a live band down here to play music. We do a community dining out. And then you can go to any bar or restaurant in Benicia or anywhere, but obviously we're focusing on Benicia. You can order drinks, right? By the state of California, if you want cocktails to go and you order food, you're good, right? So you have to have food, you can order the cocktails. So you bring your food and drinks down here and you get to enjoy the community tables in the middle of First Street and just a great community experience. And then you have live music out here. I think that one idea, which has got no traction at all. Not one single person on council I have heard back this idea. We've talked to city staff about it. We haven't heard anybody. So I'd love to hear city staff get back to us about this, because the longer we wait, the less likely we're going to be able to do anything. So right now, all I see from the city is talk. I don't see much. The boost grants is great, but there's a lot of ideas that the business owners have pushed, but we're not getting support from the city on it. And I think that's too bad, because the community, would you guys like a community dining out evening?
I see a lot of yeses out there in the audience.
Right? So I think that's something that we need to do. Now, let's talk about the industrial park. You want to help the industrial park? I have talked to a lot of the businesses out there, and there are two main things. We need to focus on infrastructure out there. Two key parts to the infrastructure. Our roads are crumbling. Some of the worst roads in Benicia happen to be in the industrial park.
Yeah.
But also, we don't have good high-speed internet out there. So how are these guys going to do business? We've had a lot of issues. I have a friend that was telling me that he couldn't get high-speed internet at his property, but the very next parcel over had high-speed internet. He says, listen, I will spend the money to connect from that pole to that pole. So it took him quite a while. I don't know if it was about a year, but it's a lot of fighting. We talked about business owners have to fight. That's because people don't like to just say yes and take care of us, right? So we have to fight for what we need, what we believe in. So the infrastructure in the industrial park does generate the lion's share of revenue for our city. They're very important. And I think that we need to hear out what they want more. So the Chamber of Commerce has BIPA, which is Benicia Industrial Park Association, as part of the chamber. They are a great advocacy group, and I think that they should have a little bit more of the ear of City Council.
I remember growing up, your phone might ring, and if you answered your phone, you said, "Shop Benicia first, get a sweet deal downtown somewhere."
Yeah.
Are there any innovative things like that where like we market to ourselves to consume our own products?
Well, we got to support our town. Every town should do this. And so, yes, the Chamber of Commerce used to have a whole thing about Shop Benicia first. So I actually put on my signs. So I feel like you just handed me another one. Thank you. So there's a couple things. So you'll notice on all of my campaign signs, even the graphics that we put out, I recreated the logo that says Shop Benicia first. I think that's key. So support your downtown, support your community, look for the resources that you need. Sadly, a guy can't buy a pair of pants in town. But you know what? If we would support it, can you imagine?
That's true.
Right?
It's true.
I don't even think I can buy a pair of shoes in town.
Oh my gosh.
So, but the reality is if we don't support these businesses, they're not going to come here, right? If we don't support the businesses that we have right now, they're not going to stay here. And that's really important for our community. So Shop Benicia first is a big thing. And I will tell you that for me, running for mayor of Benicia, I had, early on, I started asking a lot of my friends that were in politics, hey, so if I do this, where do I get my signs printed? Oh, Sacramento's the cheapest place. Really? Do we have any shops in Benicia that could do it? Yeah, but they're too expensive. You got to be kidding me. So I kept getting the same answer, and I talked to people all over in different campaign races. This is the same answer I got from pretty much everybody. So go online, you'll find the cheapest. So I decided, after I heard all this, I live in Benicia. I'm a Benicia business owner. I'm running for mayor in Benicia. I'm going to shop Benicia first. So yes, we probably paid a little bit more money for our campaign signs, but boy, do they look great. And they are printed right here in Benicia, which I think is really important. Secondly, when, we're not raising a lot of money, and that's by intent, right? So everybody's broke right now. I'm not going to go out and say, hey, can you give me some money? So we're trying to spend the least amount of money as possible. So that means that we're not getting 1,000 signs printed in one run. We couldn't. But the great thing is, since we're printing it right here in Benicia, on Tuesday, when the shop opens up again, if I need another 100 signs, I can call them. They can print them and have them that day. Same quality, if not better, from any other shop. But they're here. That's key.
So are you, going back a minute, are you pushing for Nicole Yarbrough at Pink Arrows to have a men's section?
You know what, Nicole? That's a great idea. I'm a big guy, so if you get some clothes in there, I would love to go
Pink Arrows, big and tall. I like it.
Hey, who called me big?
Well, look how tall I am.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
So you're running a little bit of a reform campaign because you do think there are improvements to be made. You're talking about communication. I would say the opposite of communication from a government standpoint is transparency.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that you have some thoughts on that.
I really do. I'm looking back at my notes because, gosh, we have so many things on here that we're not going to get to today.
Yeah.
But I could tell you that, one of the communication is huge. I would support the city of Benicia hiring a communications director. Not a lot of cities have that. They have public information officers. That's very different. Communications director is actually one of those jobs that can bring revenue in. So instead of spending money on public relations, for example, we have a communications director at the city of Benicia, which I'm hoping that this happens in the future, that already has great media connections. So instead of having to pay for ads, we get the media to come in and they cover fun stories, because Benicia is an amazing town with a lot of great opportunities for stories. And so that generates a lot of excitement. But the other thing is, in terms of transparency, we have a treasurer here, but the treasurer's role has been diminished. And I'm really happy to say that Ken Polk, our treasurer, who's running again unopposed, has endorsed me publicly for the mayor's seat. So thank you very much, Ken. And you and I hope, get to work together on this. But I really want to fully restore the role of treasurer. We need that great citizen oversight. Then there's also the Benicia Finance Committee. Guys, we have a lot of financial issues here. And unfortunately, I think there's this attitude within city government. We don't want to tell everybody about our financial issues because you're only going to get involved and make our job harder. We have hard decisions to make, so stay out of it. I think that's the wrong attitude. So I'd really like to see the Benicia Finance Committee come back. They've been waylaid for, I believe, about 2 years. So we need to bring those guys back let them pour through all of our finances because it's our money. City government or in government in general, I think they start to look at the money. It's like, you know what? We're not using credit cards right now. We're not broke, so let's go ahead and spend $216,000, which was a huge mistake. Fortunately, that got beat down, but still to $89,000. Mm-hmm. But if we have our finance committee and they're pouring over our finances and they're really understanding and questioning things, then we can hold our elected representatives along with our city leadership financially responsible and accountable for the money they're spending and the decisions that they're making. Okay. Really important.
Yeah, I mean, accountability is good. Let me get some questions from the live audience here. Any questions from you all? Yes, sir.
If you step up forward, you can be picked up by the microphone better.
Sure, thank you. So I understand recently the city employees enacted a pay increase, but it wasn't on an equal terms with our law enforcement. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
So when it comes to human resources kind of stuff, I'm not privy to a lot, right? Because they're very quiet about it. Yeah. But I have talked to many people within our city, and the reality is, yeah, so there was a 3.5%. And boy, again, because I'm not on the inside, if I misquote anything, by the way, once I'm in the inside, I probably won't be able to talk about a lot of that, right? But right now, it's not secret information. I'm a public person, right? So 3.5%, I understand our city employees got, which, by the way, our city employees deserve way more. I don't know how much. I don't know if the city can afford to give more, right? We need to look at that and weigh that opportunity. But boy, our city staff, they work really, really hard. So they got 3.5%. I think unfortunately, it was a bit low. And I would really want to look at opportunities to help, bring up some of that, right, for our city employees, because that'll save us money on retention, right? But the police department, now these guys, I don't know anybody in our town that doesn't love our police department, right? So these guys only got a 2.5% pay raise, is my understanding. They did get that extra 1%, but it's being held back. So it's not been awarded to them yet. It should have been granted to them on day one. And it's not a lot of money. I think it may be somewhere around $60,000 or so. The city needs to make sure that our police officers get that extra 1% to bring them at least up level with the same increase everybody else got. I think that's first. But I want to pivot to the retention issue, right? Because if you look at retention, I as a business owner know that if I lose if I lost my chef, God forbid, I love this guy. We've been working together for years. He's amazing. And replacing him would be a significant problem. It'd be expensive for me, right? So as a city, when we lose key city positions, when we lose firefighters, when we lose police officers, public works people that are seasoned, there are two main problems as I see it. Number one, there's a cost. So I've heard that we lost 6 police officers over the last 12 months for purely economic reasons. There's lots of reasons to leave a city.
That's expensive.
It's expensive. And so the number that I hear, I've heard a few, but let's say it's $150,000 to lose a police officer, because you got to backfill with overtime. You got to go through the whole hiring process. And then there's a whole 6-month training process. It's expensive. So if the numbers are right, 6 times 150,000, that's $900,000. We can give them a little bit of a bump in pay, which they need, which would retain them, and then we're not going to lose them so much. The average years of service for our law enforcement in Benicia is really low. We've been really lucky. We have had some really great lateral transfers, right? So people that have already been seasoned a little bit at another department and then come over to Benicia, but they're still brand new in Benicia. If you want to limit your liability and your problems in Benicia, you don't want to constantly have turnover in your law enforcement. So we want to increase the average years of service. So if we give our officers a little bit, we're not going to make them the top paid. We couldn't afford it, right? And there's a lot of perks to working in Benicia. But if we can get them a little bit of a pay increase, at least bring them middle. We don't want them on the bottom, right? And they deserve it. They do a lot more. Boy, I'll tell you what, go to other cities without mentioning specific names, call for the police department because somebody might be in your front yard. Good luck. They're not going to come down unless there's a gun involved. Benicia, every time you call our dispatch, our fantastic professional dispatchers, they answer the phone. And every single time that you need somebody to show up, one of our officers shows up, and they're fantastic. So we don't have the racial bias. We don't have the racial issues in our police department, which is really important. We have a very proactive chief. We have an amazing chief. but the entire department is very professional, and they really love our community. So we want to retain those officers. We want to improve their years of service. I would like to see us hire them and have them retire from here. But then with the fire department, same thing. We've lost two wonderful firefighters to other cities simply because they can get paid better. And I'm not knocking them, because I'll tell you what, if I can get $40,000 a year more to go to another city to support my family, it's not a question. So we need to work on that. And when we lose a firefighter, the number that I hear, $300,000.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want these guys, we want to increase the average years of service for across the board for our city employees, because we're a great town. We need to hire positions like, we don't have an in-house plan check review. One of the problems that my friend Jeff Cromer's had up at Pacifica Pizza is we don't have in-house plan check review. I'm sorry, but there's no excuse for that. In a town of 29,000 people, we need to have some of our own in-house instead of contracting out for so many things. Like we said earlier, contracting out for some things makes sense, but there's a lot of things that we do that don't make sense. We haven't had a building inspector since my buddy John Silva left the city of Benicia. So I think these are things that we really need to address with our city staff.
Speaking of Benicia PD, badge number 1, Harold Bray, hometown hero.
Yeah.
If whoever's the next mayor is going to hear from me, I want to get a street named after this guy. Can you commit now to supporting that if you're mayor?
I'd support that right now as a business owner.
Boom.
Harold
Bray.
You got my vote.
Badge number 1. All right. Another question from the audience. Yes.
Come on up.
I have two questions. They're both safety and security related.
Okay.
The first question is, last couple of weeks, we've had 2 incidences where women were approached by suspicious males, and their antennas went up and they were able to steer away from that situation. And of course, we've had, Pearl Pinson, who's been missing for several years now. There was also a suspicious van that was driving around very slowly where kids were. And, so my question is, can we come up with a passive security camera system to where if there is an incident and we've got a description that the Benicia PD has help in finding that vehicle and probably solving, an issue that will occur further down. And the second part of that safety and security question is, for those of us who have alarm systems, I'm charged $25 a year for an alarm that has never gone off, as a false alarm. Yet I'm being charged because we have people like this that their alarms go off all the time. Why is it that those people that have the problem are the ones that are charged instead of the rest of us having to deal with that?
I'm going to take the second question first because it's quick and easy. $25 a year for your burglar alarm is ridiculous. There's no revenue. There's no benefit to the city for that. I want more people with alarms. So I really support, that's one of these silly fees that we instituted. I believe that also was a post-2017 fee. We need to get rid of that. We should encourage people to be safe. $25, all it does is disincentivize people to have, it's not a lot of money, but it's still a disincentive. So that's easy. I say we get rid of that. And that, as a business owner right now, I support dropping that fee. As mayor, I will absolutely support dropping that fee. But I think we're also looking at redoing a lot of our fees. We need to drop a lot of our fee structure, period. Which means we have to make up for that loss in other areas. So there is a yin and yang. So now to your first question, cameras in particular and the safety issue, I would say, first off, my understanding is the city, we do have several cameras around town, right? Which is great. I know a few spots, but I won't name them because it doesn't do anybody any good. So I believe that there's an interest to get more cameras in our community. But the fact is that, yes, cameras are great. But remember, every time we talk about cameras, there's always going to be somebody there saying, hey, that's an infringement on my rights to privacy. If you're on a public street, you really have no right to privacy. Let's be honest, right? Right. And we want to protect our citizens. So license plate readers is another thing that I think helps to your question. So we have a couple of our vehicles, police officer vehicles here in town are equipped with LPRs, license plate readers, and those are great. But there's also been a lot of talk, and I kind of thought we already had them going in, but I haven't seen them go in yet. Stationary license plate readers in key locations throughout town, on and off ramps. So I think that would help a lot. But now the third thing to address your question, education. We have to educate our citizens. You know, those motion sensor floodlights, put them on your property, right? That helps a lot. We still have a lot of car break-ins. This is kind of like, we're a very safe town. We were recently ranked the 17th safest town in California,
Nice.
right? Which is terrific. I mean, I grew up here and I've always felt safe. I never locked my door growing up unless I was trying to lock out one of my siblings, but
Yes.
that's a different topic.
Mike.
So educating our citizens in terms of how to protect themselves. You need to be aware, right? Situational awareness. What do we teach our law enforcement? Situational awareness. Know your surroundings. Know who's in your bubble. But also get those cameras. So have cameras on your house. It's so cheap now. You can get Blink cameras. There's the Arlos. There's all kinds of options. The Nest cams, Ring cams. So I think that we can't just look at the city, at the government, at the police department to protect us. We have a responsibility to also protect ourselves. Being educated and situationally aware, having those motion sensing floodlights, having some cameras, those all help. But the cameras aren't going to help you after there's an incident.
Yeah.
Right? They're only going to help you help you catch somebody. We don't want victims in our town. Don't be a victim. Educate yourself, educate the community. I would support a citywide education campaign for safety for the citizens. I think that would be outstanding.
Any other questions from the live audience at all? Yeah.
Come on up.
Hey, Jason. So my name is David, and I was first introduced to you, Jason, by a Cron 4 news story with the business lockdown and all that. And the one thing I hear out of you, and I really love and respect, is your immense support for the business and businesses. So, I'm not real up on the political protocols of, what your authority is with the state and local health departments, the state governor, in regards to the lockdowns that we're having. You mentioned, there was an $11 million, we're facing an $11 million budget shortfall. I don't know what those numbers encompass, but I would really bet you that a high percentage of those numbers are from the lockdown and those revenues not coming into the city. So I've been hearing everything you say, and I really support it all. And I love your support for the business. So I would just like to know, how will you interact and under, the authority that you would have with these state and local health organizations and the governor to open up businesses, to stop this lockdown, now and in the future. We're about to come out of this, I think, but this is, if anything, is awakening a lot of people to, how this is going to affect us again in the future if this occurs, if this happens again. So as a mayor, what can you address, and how can you address that to us?
David, I had some bad news. As mayor, I don't have a lot of power, right? Okay. Especially with the state and the county. When it comes to I think the overburdensome things that COVID has done, that our state's done, I don't support it. Anybody that knows me knows that I am not happy. The way we have destroyed our businesses, we have destroyed the kids' lives by keeping them out of school, the parents' lives by keeping the kids out of school, right? It's been absolutely poorly handled, I think, on just about every single level. Now, here's the good news, is the mayor, the council, the city can be an advocate for the county and the state. The state could care less what we think. This is very clear. The state doesn't care what the county thinks, because I know county supervisors that we have terrific. Aaron Hannigan, Jim Spearing, these guys are terrific. And they are, I believe, fighting for us. The state doesn't listen to them. Now, so the city can do, there's some power that we have, there's some power we don't. Talking about the businesses, and thank you for recognizing, yeah, I'm a business owner. 28 years I've owned business in Benicia. So I definitely support our businesses. I think our community as a whole supports the businesses. So ultimately, there was a taqueria that was trying to move into Solano Square, right across from Pizza Pirate. And I just heard that they backed out. They've been trying for a long time. I was really disappointed here. I was excited, right? Because another good business in town helps, again, to diversify our tax base, but it also makes Benicia more interesting. So what happened, I understood, I was really happy to hear it was not because of the city. We have some great city staff that were really trying to help them. Unfortunately, it was the county. And so the city did not have the ability with the county to make anything happen. For me as a restaurant owner, as mayor, I feel like I would be a little bit better suited to go in and just act as a business owner, even though I'm the mayor, There's two different hats there. To go in and be an advocate, working with the county health department to help that business get what they needed reasonably to open up and be a great Benicia business. So the reality is our city council, our mayor, our council members and our mayor, they don't have really any input. We don't get to say when the school's open. We don't get to say when the business is open, because I'll tell you what, for me, I would say let's do it right now. So it's been really tough. And you are correct. That shortfall that we're looking at for our budget has directly to do with Measure C funds and sales tax, which is a big deal. So most of the money in Benicia, most of the city revenue is collected through property tax. So that's a good thing. I don't support increasing our property taxes, by the way, but that, right? So let's be clear about that. But I do support getting our businesses reopened. We need leadership in this town, strong leadership in this town that goes from business to business and says, hey, how can I personally, as mayor, help you? But I already have that answer from my standpoint, and it is to listen to the business owners, let them innovate their solutions, and to support them in that. That's really where it's at.
Any other questions from the live audience at all? We're coming up here on just over an hour. I wanted to ask you a couple questions myself first. Environment is always a part of everything that we do.
Absolutely.
And it's important to slow down and get these things right, but it's also can't stand in the way of progress. So how do we balance this when you're mayor? What do you do?
Well, I mean, environment is something that we always need to take seriously, right? So again, working with our businesses, that they're always doing the right thing. There's a lot of rules when it comes. So you look at the refinery, for example, right? They're already under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of rules. The Bay Area, air quality management, right? They have monitoring systems. I do support adding more monitoring systems in town, and I know that they've been working on that. So I think taking care of our environment is really, really key. But now I think that your question might have kind of led me in a little bit different direction. I think that the state of California is requiring all cities to have a climate action plan, right? Or there's a verbiage for it that I'm missing at the moment. But here's the thing: when it gets into climate change is real. I get it, right? I mean, we have the seasons change. So we can debate lots of things within that conversation. But the reality is that I think it's a bigger issue on our local level. There's so much that we can do. But I think in the past, our city has spent a lot of money on things that are really state and federal issues. We don't need to spend a lot of money on consultants, beyond what we're required to do by the state. So I think we need to take it seriously. But I really think that we need to be very careful and budget it. We need to balance it with how we're spending our money. We need to be more responsible stewards of our community's money. So environment's really important, but you know what? So the revenues, right?
So just a couple quick questions to close out here. One of the things that people want to know about is there's three choices for mayor right now. Two people have been on the city council. Why you?
All right. So first off, I'm going to tell you that I can compliment Christina Strawbridge and I can compliment Steve Young. I like them both. I've known them both. Steve, I only got to know recently, and I really like him. Christina, I've known since I was a kid. In local politics, we don't need to beat each other up. We don't need to get into the mud. I think that it's absolutely okay to compliment and agree with other people, even if you don't always agree with them. I can tell you that I have seen, all three of us have been very kind to each other. Heck, last night, I was really excited. We had so much fun. We went and put our campaign signs out, and I ran into Steve Young's team putting out signs, too. And we joked. I took a picture in front of his sign. I sent it to him. I said, hey, good job, Steve. So we can have fun. We're a small town. We don't have to hate on each other. There's a lot of hating on social media. Gosh, if you guys only had a clue how hard it is to volunteer, to put your neck on the line to run for office in a small town like this, we don't need you beating them up. I don't want anybody that supports me saying anything bad about anybody else, attacking anybody else. If you want to ask questions, that's fine. But trolls is a fascinating word, right? I only started hearing about trolls in the last few years thanks to social media. Yeah. I'm tired of the trolls. And so I don't think anybody should have to put up with the trolls. If you want to be relevant in the conversation, don't troll, don't swarm, don't attack, ask questions. You can come talk to me anytime. You don't have to agree with me. And in fact, If you think you disagree with me, I would love for you to come talk to me. I have conversations with people all the time. I'm really approachable. I'm here at the restaurant all the time.
All the time.
I like to take my coffee, in the late morning, right here on the sidewalk dining patio at the loft, and I talk to people all day long when they walk by. I love it. So, and I've talked to many people that think they don't like me, and that's okay. I had one woman, she was nice, but she was a little aggressive. She's like, "Well, I can't support you for mayor." I'm like, I respect that, and I choose the person that you think lines up best with your values, and support them. There's no reason to go out and attack people, right? And I'm really sad to see that. I don't want to see people attacking any of the other candidates. Trevor's terrific. We've got Terry's terrific. Tom's terrific. Christina and Steve.
Yeah.
Right. So there's 6 of us right now running for office. I say, it's hard, but we're all volunteering and we're all doing it from a good spot. I don't think any one of us has a bad intention in running for office. We all love our town. We all want to support our town in our own way. Now, we have a difference of opinion on things, but I'll tell you what, if I don't win, I'm going to support whoever wins, and I'm going to want to work with them as much as possible. If I win, the people that didn't win, I will still want to work with them as much as possible. They have a passion for our community. That's why you run for office here. It's not a fun thing to do. I mean, I am enjoying it, honestly, because I've met so many wonderful people, but it's a lot of work. And if I win, and I'm really hoping to. I'm playing this game real serious. I love it. I love hard work, and I really, really am dedicated to my community. Again, I was born and raised here. So this is everything. I've never lived outside of Benicia. And, I invested all of my money into my downtown, which I think is really important. So I think that's a key difference.
That says a lot. You put your money where your life is, and that's incredible. One of my favorite questions to ask people in Afghanistan or Iraq when I was going out into the towns and trying to understand what was going on was, what is the smallest, simplest, most obvious change we could make for the better here in Benicia?
That's easy.
Okay.
Ready for this? It's a big one. Be kind. Be nice to each other. That's the smallest, simplest thing that every single one of us can do. There's been a lot of talk lately about racial divide. Be nice to each other. Lift each other up. Support people. I will help anybody that I can. Now, if you're not a nice person, don't waste your time with me because we're not going to get along. But if you are a kind person, a nice person, a common sense, reasonable, man, I will do anything I can to help you. I'm an advocate for any of our other businesses downtown, and I have been for years. It's not new. I am not doing things because I'm running for mayor. I'm running for mayor because of the things that I've been doing. I think it's really important. So just be kind. If you can't say something nice to somebody, then keep your darn mouth shut. Isn't that what our parents taught us?
I've shouted out a number of businesses. I just wanted to say one kind word about the workshop with Danny. And I bet that guy's got 3 ideas he would love to get permission to do.
Hey, Danny Glassmaker, you come see me anytime. I love your restaurant as well. We grew up together, and I love the Glassmaker family.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
You know what? I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All righty.
And anybody come by, see me anytime. Feel free to ask me any questions. Everybody's welcome.